How much of your life is being drained by things that were never yours to control? I want you to sit with that question for a moment. Most people wake up already tired, not because of the work they will do, but because of the thoughts they will carry. Long before the day truly begins, their minds are already consumed by worries they cannot influence, expectations they never chose, and pressures that come from everywhere except within themselves. They waste precious energy fighting battles that cannot be won because those battles were never theirs in the first place. Picture for a moment the way many mornings begin. You reach for your phone before you even stand up. A single comment on social media irritates you, and suddenly you're arguing in your head with someone you've never met. A message you received the night before replays in your mind again and again, as if your mental replaying will somehow change the past. You think about conversations that haven't happened, about people who may or may not approve of you, about events far away that will continue with or without your concern. Before you've taken your first step of the day, a part of your energy has already leaked away into things you cannot control. And it doesn't stop there. You replay an insult from yesterday as if analyzing it will grant you peace. You imagine all the ways a meeting might go wrong. You worry about the choices other people might make, even though they were never going to consult you anyway. These small, invisible moments accumulate, and slowly, your life becomes defined by reactions rather than decisions. You begin the day not as a creator, but as a defender, protecting yourself from possibilities that may never come and from people who may never think the thoughts you imagine they think. This is one of the quiet tragedies of modern life. We are exhausted not by action, but by rumination, not by responsibilities, but by overextension of the mind. We burn mental energy on storms we cannot calm, on winds we cannot redirect, on outcomes that live entirely outside our influence. And every moment spent there diminishes our ability to act where our influence truly matters. You may think this is normal. You may think this is simply what it means to care, but real caring, real contribution, real effectiveness, these come from focusing your energy where it can actually create movement. Your energy follows your attention. And when your attention goes to what you can't control, your life begins to shrink. It's not immediate, it's gradual, subtle. You lose a bit of clarity here, a bit of confidence there. You become more reactive, more anxious, more dependent on the shifting behavior of others. You drift further from your values and further from the life you intended to build. You become tired in ways that sleep cannot cure. But here is the truth, and it is a liberating one. You were not designed to live at the mercy of external forces. You were not built to spend your days monitoring everything around you. You are meant to operate from a place of inner strength, guided by principles rather than pressure. And when you redirect your energy toward what is actually yours to influence, the exhaustion begins to lift. Your mind clears. Your confidence returns. Your capacity expands. In this message, I will show you how to do precisely that. Not by ignoring reality, not by pretending challenges don't exist, but by reclaiming the profound power that comes from focusing your attention where it creates real change. This is one of the most transformative shifts you can make in your life. When you stop wasting energy on what lies outside your control, you recover the energy to build, to choose, to act, and to become the person you were meant to be. Let's begin that process now. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It's the exhaustion that comes from spending your emotional, mental, and even physical energy on things that were never meant to be carried by you. This invisible drain shows up in the form of worry, frustration, comparison, and the constant anticipation of what might go wrong. You feel it in your chest before a difficult day, in your mind before a conversation, in your body when you scroll through things that anger or discourage you. It becomes the quiet background noise of your life, a tension that never fully leaves because the mind is always chasing what it can't change. When you devote your energy to what lies outside your influence, the consequences are real and far-reaching. Your productivity declines, not because you lack ability, but because your attention is fractured. Important tasks feel heavier, decisions feel slower, and your day becomes harder to navigate. Mental clarity diminishes. You struggle to focus. Ideas seem harder to organize. Small interruptions feel bigger than they are. When your mind is stuck wrestling with the uncontrollable, everything else becomes harder to handle. Your relationships also begin to suffer. When you're mentally preoccupied with things beyond your control, you become more reactive, more irritable, more withdrawn. You listen less, misunderstand more, and carry emotional residue from situations that have nothing to do with the people in front of you. The emotional and mental fatigue that builds during the day spills into every interaction. You begin to see problems where there are none, and you lose the capacity to respond with patience or understanding. There is also a deeper cost: the constant emotional wear that comes from living in a state of low-grade anxiety. The mind keeps replaying scenarios that never happen, conversations that won't occur, and fears that may never materialize. It whispers, "What if?" over and over until the thought becomes a loop. You feel powerless, not because life is unmanageable, but because you're trying to manage parts of life that aren't yours to manage. This leads to a chronic sense of helplessness and emotional paralysis that grows stronger the more you feed it. Let me paint a picture you may recognize. Imagine someone who arrives at the end of the day completely exhausted. They didn't handle a major crisis. They didn't climb a mountain. They didn't complete meaningful work or move closer to a personal goal. And yet they have nothing left to give. When they look back at the day, they realize their mind spent hours replaying conversations, fabricating arguments, worrying about someone's opinion, anticipating possible failures, and comparing themselves to others. The mind was active all day, but their life barely moved. They were busy, but not productive. Tired, but not fulfilled. This is the cost of fighting what can't be controlled. There's a reason the brain gravitates toward the uncontrollable. It seeks predictability. It craves certainty. It tries to create a sense of safety by analyzing every possibility, even those that are irrelevant or imaginary. Worry becomes a misguided attempt to feel prepared. Rumination feels like a form of problem solving, but this is a deception. The mind chases the uncontrollable because it gives the illusion of taking action while accomplishing nothing. It creates the feeling of control without the reality of control. And this is where the real danger lies. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you surrender control of yourself. Your emotions are shaped by forces you can't influence. Your peace is determined by the behavior of others. Your confidence rises and falls with circumstances that change without your permission. You become reactive, dependent, and emotionally unstable, not because you're weak, but because you're fighting a battle you can't win. This is not a small issue. It is one of the main reasons people live anxious, overwhelmed lives. If you don't shift your focus, you will continue to pour your energy into the weather, the economy, the opinions of others, the mistakes of the past, and the uncertain future. You will keep reacting to social media trends, to news cycles designed to provoke fear, to the moods of people you barely know. You will live your days responding to forces that have nothing to do with your values, your mission, or your true purpose. Unless you make a deliberate shift, you will keep losing yourself to everything you cannot influence. But the moment you redirect your attention toward what is truly yours to shape, the exhaustion begins to lift and your personal power returns. That shift is what we will create next. There is a simple mental map that can change the way you experience every day of your life. 2 circles, just 2. But within these circles lies the difference between exhaustion and purpose, between frustration and strength, between living reactively and living effectively. I call them the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And whether you realize it or not, you are living in one of them every moment of your life. The circle of concern is everything you worry about, everything you think about, everything you react to but cannot control. It is vast, loud, emotional, and endlessly demanding. It includes opinions, misunderstandings, weather, politics, the economy, rumors, trends, people's feelings, people's mistakes, people's choices. It pulls you like gravity, constantly drawing your energy outward. I often call it the emotional black hole because no matter how much attention you pour into it, it never fills, never ends, and never gives anything back. The more energy you invest there, the smaller your sense of personal power becomes. The circle of influence is something entirely different. It is your space, your character, your responsibilities, your actions, your attitudes, your decisions. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not glamorous, but it is powerful. This circle is where you shape who you are and who you are becoming. I call it the workshop of character because everything meaningful in your life, your growth, your effectiveness, your relationships, your confidence begins here. In this smaller circle, your energy produces results, clarity, and momentum. It is where you build a life from the inside out. To understand how these circles operate, you only need to look at everyday life. For example, you cannot control the algorithms that push content toward you, but you can control what you choose to consume, how long you consume it, and whether you let it influence your mind. That choice alone can change your emotional landscape. You cannot control how other people behave, how they speak, how they treat you, how they live their lives, but you can control your boundaries, your responses, your expectations, and the kind of behavior you tolerate. Those choices will shape the quality of every relationship you have. You cannot control traffic. You cannot eliminate delays, slow drivers, or unexpected interruptions. But you can control how early you leave, the attitude you bring to the drive, the way you manage your breathing, or the mindset you adopt during waiting. Some people spend an hour in traffic and feel completely drained. Others use that same hour to think, breathe, reflect, learn, or prepare. The difference is not the situation, it is the circle in which they are living. In every modern situation, this principle applies. You cannot control how your company changes, but you can control your skill development. You cannot control whether the world is noisy, but you can control the space you create for silence. You cannot control the unpredictable moods of others, but you can control the steadiness of your own character. You cannot control every outcome, but you can control the effort and intentionality you bring to your work. The more you place your attention where you have true agency, the more your energy expands. To work effectively within these circles, you must use the 4 uniquely human faculties that give you the ability to choose rather than react. The first is self-awareness, the capacity to notice where your attention is going. If your mind is drifting toward the emotional black hole, you can gently pull it back. This single act is the beginning of reclaiming your power. The second is conscience, that quiet inner voice that helps you choose your priorities based on principles instead of impulses. Conscience reminds you that wasting energy on the uncontrollable does not align with your deepest values, and it guides you back toward what truly matters. The third is imagination, the ability to visualize solutions, possibilities, and actions within your circle of influence. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" or "Why won't they change?" imagination encourages the question, "What can I do next?" This shifts your mindset from helplessness to creativity. The fourth is independent will, the ability to act according to your chosen values, even when emotions pull you elsewhere. Independent will is what allows you to take the smallest meaningful action, even when part of you wants to stay stuck in complaint or frustration. It is the faculty that turns intention into momentum. When you operate from your circle of influence using these faculties, something remarkable happens. Your influence grows, your clarity grows, your strength grows, your sense of control over your life grows. External situations may remain the same, but your response becomes steadier, more intentional, more effective. You become less reactive to the world and more responsive to your purpose. And this leads to the core truth of this principle. Power grows wherever you place responsibility. If you place responsibility outside yourself onto people, circumstances, or the unpredictable nature of life, you give your power away. But when you place responsibility on your own actions, your own choices, your own character, your power begins to expand. You become someone who shapes life rather than someone shaped by it. The moment you understand this, the world begins to look different. Not because the world has changed, but because you have reclaimed the place where your real power lives. There is a moment in every day when you feel the pull of what you cannot control. A piece of news, a comment, a worry, a memory, a possibility, something grabs your attention and begins to pull you outward. If you follow that pull long enough, you'll find yourself mentally exhausted, emotionally scattered, and spiritually disconnected from your own purpose. The truth is simple, but few people live by it. You cannot eliminate what you can't control, but you can starve it. You starve it by refusing to feed it your attention, your emotion, your energy. You starve it by redirecting yourself toward what you can influence, toward the place where your actions actually matter. To help you make this shift in real time, not in theory, not in some ideal future, but in the middle of your actual life, I want to introduce what I call the energy shift method. It's a practical, simple, powerful 5-step shift designed to break the cycle of reactivity and bring you back into your circle of influence. And if you practice it daily, even imperfectly, it will transform the way you experience stress, difficulty, and uncertainty. The first step is interrupt the spiral. The moment you notice your mind racing towards something you cannot change, stop. Take one breath, not to relax, but to interrupt momentum. Most mental spirals continue simply because they go unchallenged. A single pause disrupts the automatic reaction and creates space for choice. Without interruption, emotion leads. With interruption, you lead. The second step is name the illusion. Quietly acknowledge the truth. This is outside my control. Say it slowly, even silently. Naming it breaks the illusion of responsibility. It frees you from the unconscious belief that worrying harder, thinking longer, or replaying the scenario will somehow produce control. The mind often clings to the uncontrollable because it creates the illusion of safety. When you name the illusion, you remove its power. The third step is redirect to agency. Ask yourself, what can I influence in the next 5 minutes? Not tomorrow, not next month, not in theory, right now. This question shifts you from helplessness to capability, from rumination to action, from fear to purpose. Agency isn't about solving the whole problem. It's about taking the smallest meaningful step. This is the birthplace of empowerment. The fourth step is anchor with a value. Before acting, choose a value that will shape the quality of your response. Patience, clarity, service, courage, discipline, kindness. Values transform action into leadership. They transform reaction into character. When you operate from principle instead of impulse, your behavior becomes intentional, steady, and aligned with the person you want to be. The fifth step is reinforce with behavior. Take one small action immediately. One. That action becomes the anchor that stabilizes your mindset. It could be organizing your desk, making a call, sending a message, completing a small task, setting a boundary, or simply breathing deeply for 10 seconds. Micro victories build momentum. They tell your mind, I am not powerless. I am capable. I am acting where it matters. Let me show you how this works in everyday life. Imagine someone criticizes you unexpectedly. Your first impulse might be anger, defensiveness, or hurt. The reactive mind jumps into overanalysis. Why did they say that? What did they mean? How dare they? But if you apply the energy shift method, you interrupt the spiral, acknowledge that you cannot control their words, redirect to what you can influence your response, and choose clarity as your value. So instead of reacting emotionally, you respond thoughtfully. You protect your peace, your dignity, and your character. Or consider a financial worry. You cannot control the entire economy. You cannot control every outcome. But you can control today's choices, your spending, your planning, your preparation. When you redirect your energy to what you can influence, the anxiety begins to lose its grip. You trade fear for responsibility, which is where real progress begins. Then think about a discouraging piece of news. The world is full of events that provoke fear, anger, or sadness. You can't prevent the world from being turbulent, but you can choose your contribution for the day. Maybe you add value to someone's life. Maybe you improve your family environment. Maybe you offer kindness instead of negativity. These acts, though small, keep your life aligned with meaning rather than noise. And here is the emotional truth behind this entire method. Your energy returns the moment you return to the present. When your mind stops drifting into futures you cannot predict and past you cannot change, your strength comes back, your clarity returns, your stability grows. You feel yourself again not scattered but centered, not reactive but intentional. So I want you to remember this phrase. Let it echo in your mind as a guiding principle. Your life expands or shrinks based on where you place your daily energy. If you place it in fear, your life shrinks. If you place it in comparison, your life shrinks. If you place it in uncontrollable forces, your life shrinks. But if you place it in meaningful action, in personal responsibility, in values, in influence, your life expands. It becomes richer, calmer, and more powerful. This is the turning point of the entire message. Once you shift your energy toward what matters, your life no longer feels overwhelming. It becomes something you can shape moment by moment, choice by choice, day by day. If you want to stop wasting energy on the things you cannot control, you must replace emotional habit with intentional practice. Clarity is not enough. Understanding the principle is not enough. Real change comes from a system you can apply in real moments, in the middle of a stressful interaction, during an unexpected setback, or when your mind begins drifting toward fear or frustration. That is why I want to give you a simple and highly practical framework, the control reset. It is a 5-step method designed to bring your attention back to your circle of influence, restore your emotional balance, and strengthen your character one choice at a time. The first step is the 10-second self-check. Stop and ask yourself, what am I trying to control right now? This question reveals what is happening beneath the surface. Perhaps you're trying to control someone's opinion, someone's reaction, the timing of an outcome, or a situation already outside your reach. The moment you identify the truth, the illusion breaks. This simple awareness interrupts the autopilot of worry and redirects you toward conscious choice. You cannot lead yourself if you don't first recognize where your attention has wandered. The second step is the separation statement. Quietly say to yourself, this is outside my control. Let the words be calm, honest, and deliberate. This statement doesn't deny responsibility. It clarifies it. It frees your mind from the mistaken belief that anxiety equals preparation or that rumination equals progress. When you acknowledge that something is outside your control, your nervous system begins to relax. Your mind stops fighting an unwinnable battle. What remains is a sense of inner space, a moment of clarity where you can now decide your next step. The third step is the influence scan. Ask yourself, what can I influence in the next 5 minutes? Not what can I control someday, or how can I fix the entire situation? 5 minutes. This constraint forces your mind to look for agency, not fantasy. Maybe you can clarify your tone, organize a small part of your environment, prepare a response, take a breath, set a limit, or redirect your attention. This step anchors you in the real world where your influence is small but meaningful. Growth always begins here. The fourth step is the one-action rule. Take a single small action immediately. This is the behavioral anchor that turns awareness into momentum. It could be writing one sentence of an email, setting one boundary in a conversation, making one decision you've been avoiding, straightening your workspace, turning off a distracting notification, or taking one decisive breath to settle your nervous system. The action is small on purpose. Small actions bypass resistance. They shift your physiology, your mindset, and your emotional trajectory. When you act where you have influence, you reclaim your personal power. The fifth step is the identity anchor. Whisper to yourself, I choose influence over anxiety. Identity shapes behavior far more powerfully than willpower. When you remind yourself who you choose to become, intentional, principle-centered, you create a far deeper shift than simply telling yourself to stay calm. You are not avoiding emotion. You are reclaiming authorship of your response. With repetition, this identity becomes your default posture. Instead of slipping into reactivity, your reflex becomes grounded leadership. These 5 steps form the core of the control reset. But to integrate them fully into your daily life, I recommend building a few small routines around them, simple practices that reinforce the shift with repetition and reflection. The first is the night review, a brief 2-minute reflection before bed where you ask yourself, Where did I give energy to things outside my control today? And where did I choose influence instead? This creates awareness of your patterns and sharpens your ability to catch them earlier tomorrow. The second is what I call the influence journal. Each day, write down one small moment when you acted within your circle of influence. It could be choosing patience, setting a boundary, completing a task, or redirecting your thoughts. Over time, this journal becomes a record of your growth, a tangible reminder that you are changing one choice at a time. The third routine is the language reset. Replace reactive phrases such as "I can't," "I have no choice," or "they make me so upset" with empowering alternatives like "I can choose," "I can act here," or "I'm responsible for my response." Language is the bridge between thought and identity. When you change it, your internal world begins to shift. Finally, integrate micro-meditations throughout your day. 30-second pauses where you breathe deeply, relax your shoulders, and bring your attention back to the present. These brief resets prevent emotional accumulation, keep you centered, and make it easier to apply the control reset when tension rises. When you practice this system consistently, your energy stops scattering into 100 uncontrollable directions. Your mind becomes clearer, your decisions become steadier, and your character begins to direct your life rather than your circumstances. You reclaim the inner authority that reactive living slowly erodes. This is not just a method, it is a way of being, a way of living aligned with the deepest truth of your nature. You always have the power to choose where your attention goes, and where your attention goes, your life follows. There comes a moment in every journey of personal leadership when the principle becomes more than an idea, it becomes a lived reality. And that moment begins when you recognize that your energy, your attention, your emotional life no longer belong to the unpredictable movements of the world around you. They belong to you. The greatest transformation you will ever experience is not when circumstances finally cooperate, but when you stop giving them the authority to determine your inner state. Life changes the instant your energy returns to your stewardship. I want you to picture something. Imagine yourself walking through your day without the invisible weight you've been carrying, without the emotional burden of other people's moods, without the constant tension of trying to fix what was never yours, without the exhausting effort of wrestling with the uncontrollable. Picture a lighter version of yourself, someone who moves with clarity, someone whose steps are deliberate, someone who breathes more deeply because the mental noise is finally quieted. This is not fantasy. This is the natural consequence of choosing to place your energy where your influence is real. When you stop feeding what you cannot control, you begin to rediscover your strength. Your creativity rises. Your peace returns. You start acting instead of reacting. You begin deciding instead of defending. Your day takes on a different tone, less frantic, more centered, less scattered, more intentional. You stop being pulled by every shift in the world and start guiding yourself with purpose. And that quiet inner transformation becomes visible in everything you touch, your relationships, your work, your time, your presence. But this transformation does not happen by accident. It begins with a choice, one quiet, powerful internal decision. Take responsibility only for what is truly yours. Not for every opinion, not for every outcome, not for every emotion or behavior that appears in your environment, just for what is yours, your character, your responses, your attitude, your daily influence. When you live this way, something profound begins to unfold. You stop shrinking under the weight of the uncontrollable, and your life begins to expand again, slowly, steadily, meaningfully. So make this your commitment today. Today, I will give my energy only to what I can choose, create, or influence. Today, I return my attention to my stewardship. Today, I reclaim the part of my life that had been scattered into things that were never mine. Let this final affirmation settle deeply into your identity. My energy belongs to what I can choose, create, and influence. Repeat it until it becomes a quiet instinct, until it shapes the way you breathe, the way you respond, the way you lead yourself through every hour of your day. And when you finish this video, I invite you to take one small step in that direction. Watch the next chapter on clarity, focus, or personal mastery. Continue building the habits that make your life simpler, calmer, and stronger. This journey of inner leadership is not a single decision. It is a pattern, a rhythm. And with each small step, you rise into the life you were meant to live.